Hi, welcome to my channel. And yes, today I'm going to try and attempt to paint this beautiful masterpiece of Andy Warhol's, the portrait of Marilyn Monroe. And this is going to be a tough one for me, I know. First, because I haven't painted a portrait since ages. Secondly, because I never did paint too many portraits anyway. Plus, I've never painted pop art before, ever. But you know what they say, fools rush in where angels fear to tread. So, here we go. So, I have a 12 by 14-inch canvas board on which I have given a base coat of yellow color. It's a mixture of yellow medium orangey shade and lemon yellow with a little bit of white, titanium white on it. And on top of that, I've sketched out Marilyn Monroe's portrait. So let me show you the colors real quick. I've got titanium white, unbleached titanium white, cyan blue, and emerald green. And what I've done is I've taken some of the cyan blue, I've taken some of the emerald green, a little of the unbleached titanium, and some white, titanium white. Andy Warhol has he's got many of these Marilyn Monroe portraits. One of it has this blue color in the background. So let's paint the background in. The brush I'm using is a Filbert synthetic brush number 10. And I don't mind if the yellow peeks through because the blue is fairly transparent, even though I've added white to it, which should have increased its opacity, but it's still transparent and I can see the yellow peeking through, which I rather like. It's giving a nice glow to it. I may add another layer of the background, but let me see after it dries up. So I'm adding some more of the cyan blue and I'm going to give it a patchy look. I like my backgrounds to be patchy, although pop art, anyway, Warhol had his solid. But his technique of creating these Marilyn Monroe portraits was screen printing, so it's a little different from painting it with paint. So now what I've got is some emerald green, which I've taken here. I've got viridian green, and I'm adding a whole lot of unbleached titanium to create this bluish greenish color. And I'm going to paint her dress. This is the collar of her dress. I'm adding some blue at the edge, give it some dimension. And then I've got some lamp black, which I'm mixing with blue, cyan blue, and I'm going to wipe it off and dry brush some of the shades here. Getting back the blue color. Then I've mixed up the black and the blue. Now Warhol hasn't painted this, but if you see Marilyn Monroe's pictures of this painting of Warhol's, you will see she's got this, actually this part is white and this part is black. You'll find this picture, you Google it and you'll find this picture. It's such a famous picture, really. Adding some of the unbleached titanium with the greeny blue. So let's paint her hair now. I've got this permanent yellow deep, which is the orangey color. Permanent yellow deep, the yellow color. And I've got a canary yellow here. I've also got some unbleached titanium white. And let's give her a more goldenish color. Marilyn Monroe, of course, originally had dark color, but then she colored her hair a peroxide yellow, which was a great hit. And then I'm taking just the canary yellow and adding streaks of that. You know, as I try to replicate this masterpiece of Warhol's, I keep thinking that if anybody embodied pop art, it was Warhol, Andy Warhol. And if anybody embodied Tinseltown glamour, celebrity, pop culture, it had to be Marilyn Monroe. Warhol painted his first Marilyn Monroe portrait soon after her tragic death in 1962. Okay, let me quickly tell you what colors I'm using now. For the base coat of her skin, I mixed scarlet red, crimson lake, a little yellow medium, and titanium white. Alright, I'll let this layer dry up nicely and then I'll put another layer of pink color on this. Alright, I've mixed the next batch. I've added some more white and let me try that on. So, getting back to the story of this iconic painting, Warhol, even though she had died at the age of 36, Warhol chose a picture of Marilyn Monroe's from the publicity photo of her movie Niagara, which was made in 1953 when she was 10 years younger. At that time, she was at the peak of her career, youth, beauty, and celebrity. And Andy Warhol wanted to tap into that. By the time Warhol decided to paint this Marilyn Monroe portrait of his, he had already dabbled big time with pop art. His Campbell soup cans, I mean, they're famous. His Coca-Cola bottles, for example. In fact, he was the pioneering figure or artist of this genre and had already begun earning labels like the King of Pop Art or the Prince of Pop Art, even the Pope of Pop Art. Warhol wanted to take art out of the esoteric confines of the art establishment and to take it to the masses, basically. And the path he chose to do that was to use the pop culture that had erupted in the West, especially in America, during the post-World War II era. That was a time when mass consumption and mass production began getting established as such. It was a time when new prosperity had started spreading, a growing middle class with an insatiable appetite for consumer goods. So, whether on TV screens or on billboards, glossy magazines, and movie theaters, people started getting inundated with the imagery of pop culture, be it the products they consumed or the celebrities they worshipped, from soaps to movies to, of course, movie stars. And not to forget pop music. So, Warhol decided to take the idioms of the imagery that he saw all around him, the gaudy colors in the ads, the flashy colors of the movie theaters, the movie stars, the celebrities, everywhere on TV screens, and he decided to transfer that into his paintings. Plus, using the mass production of factories, of goods in factories, Warhol, because of his screen printing method of creating his art, decided to mass produce his artwork as well in his studio, aptly called the Factory. So I've got the base coat of all the features in. I've got the hair, the background, the skin, except for the lips and the eyes. So what I want to do now is I want to give her a warmer shade of skin tone. I've got vermilion red, yellow deep and titanium white. I'm going to mix up a little of the vermilion, lots of the white. Vermilion is a very strong color, little more maybe, and a little yellow. I've also got some acrylic medium with which I will thin down the paint a little bit. So getting back to Warhol and his pop art, another aspect of pop art that Warhol came up with was a rebellion against the established art that existed at that time in America, which was dominated by the abstract expressionism of artists like Jackson Pollock, Frank Stella, William de Kooning, and so on. To Warhol and the other pop artists that had begun emerging at that time, the non representational art of abstract expressionism seemed to have no relevance to people in their, day to day life. Warhol wanted his art to reach the ordinary person on the street. So he decided to make use of the well known popular imagery in the pop culture that he saw all around him, that ordinary people understood and accepted in their lives. While I was trying to decide which of Warhol's Marilyns I wanted to paint, by googling up all the images from the diptych to the 20 or so individual portraits and various others. The gold one comes to mind. That was beautiful, very iconic. And while I was doing that, I was also Googling up all the stories behind the portraits as such, why Warhol chose to paint it. I came to understand that with his Marilyn Monroe, Warhol found the convergence of two of the motifs that he was fascinated with, which was celebrity and tragedy, along with mass media and mass popular culture, of course. Around that time, in fact, he had already been exploring the tragedy theme in his disaster series of paintings. For example, the car crashes, the electric chairs. He picked up these images from newspaper pictures and he recreated them in his studio. With Marilyn's sudden tragic death and the media frenzy that broke out as a consequence, I think Warhol was touched deeply he was touched by the tragedy unfolding, of course. But Warhol also understood the commodification process that was going on. She was commodified during her career and even in her death. And he wanted to express that, I think. The battery had died out in this part, so this part wasn't recorded. But basically, I've changed the greenish blue color I had put initially on her collar to this whitish blue. I mixed up unbleached titanium, titanium white, and a little bit of blue to create this. Andy Warhol painted her, the one he has with a blue background, he painted it in a greenish blue color. But I feel, in her original dress, it's a white collar like thing that she has on her dress. So I thought I'd just put the white in. I think it looks much better this way. Anyway, it's my painting, even though it's based on Warhol's painting. I feel I have the artistic license to change it up a little bit. Andy Warhol himself changed up the same portrait with so many colors, really. So next what I'm going to do is I'm going to paint up her eyeshadow, a little bit of her earrings. So I mixed up the cyan blue, viridian green with a little bit of white, and I've mixed a little bit of the acrylic medium. So getting back to Warhol and his painting, I think the way he portrayed her is he was true to his form, really. He wanted to make an ironic statement. By the image he chose, for example, which was from a role where she is a seductive temptress. Then I'm mixing some of the violet color with the blue to create this lilac kind of color for her eyes. So Warhol chose this image of hers, the glamorous blonde with her alluring, heavy lidded eyes and her sensuously parted lips, which she had actually projected towards the cameras clicking her for the promo stills of her movie. So Warhol wanted to play into that, the play between a beautiful celebrity, the tragedy surrounding her, and the media frenzy that broke out because of that. I think Warhol, by choosing this image, made a deliberate statement, portraying the irony of it all, of the culture he lived in, and life in general. When you observe Warhol's Marilyns, because he used the silkscreen method and deliberately offsetting the prints, it seems as if Marilyn is hidden somewhere behind a masquerading mask, which is what makes these portraits so compelling. I've mixed up some magenta and I'm adding it to her eyes with a little bit of the violet and a little bit of the white. And then adding some blue, adding the same color here a little bit, the fold of her eye. So as I was saying, even though I'm not attempting to create that offset kind of effect in my painting, but because I'm trying to reproduce the garish colors that Warhol chose for his portrait, I think some of the mask effect is coming through. Interestingly, apparently Warhol had a soft spot for his black Marilyn, but his blue sage Marilyn was the one that sold for the highest dollars. And another thing, although Warhol wanted to replicate the mass production of consumer goods in his so called factory, unlike mass produced goods, each of his Marilyns is different from the other. Painting the whites of her eyes, little bit of magenta, little bit of white, little blue. So, like I was saying, though he used the same image of hers, by using different colors for each and each having a slightly different offset effect, each of his Marilyns actually has a different effect. While in one she is dark, in another she looks very gaudy, in another she looks luminous, and for example, in the Blue Sage one, she looks the glamorous actress that she was. His gold Marilyn has a particularly interesting effect. In that one, she seems beatified, according to art analysts. Apparently, that was the influence of the iconic images of the saints that he was familiar with because his parents used to take him to Sunday church in his childhood. So, though he used the concept of mass production in his artwork, Warhol the artist shines through, especially in his Marilyn portraits. So let's paint her mouth next. I'll start with the teeth. So I've got some unbleached titanium, titanium white, and some cyan blue. I've mixed them all together and I'm going to use this as the base coat. I'm using a small brush, a synthetic number 2 filbert. I'll let this layer dry up and then put another coat on top. Alright, for the next layer. So the white on the teeth have more or less dried. Now I'm going to paint in the lips. I've got brilliant red, crimson and scarlet lake. I'll mix it up and make a bright red color for her lips. Red is a very transparent color, so I'll probably have to put another layer. Marilyn Monroe's signature red lipstick was a shade named Ruby Red from the brand Max Factor, which you still get on Amazon, at least on Amazon India. I checked. I'll just wait for that layer to dry up and then put a next coat. So here's the next layer. Now wait for this to dry and go on ahead. I'm adding some of the darker crimson here and there. Adding a little medium yellow to the brilliant red and just adding a few dabs here and there. Added back the brilliant red. So now what I want to do is I want to lighten up her eyelids a little more, the eyeshadow she's got. So I've mixed up a little bit of cobalt blue, the viridian green and lots of white. And now what I want to do is I want to create a chromatic black by mixing various colors. Let me show you. I've got ultramarine blue, the cobalt blue, scarlet lake red, a medium yellow. If you mix up these colors, you see you'll get a dark color, which is not exactly black, but a dark enough color, become darker. And I've got some Prussian blue here, which I can add to make it even darker. So when I add blue and the red, it becomes a purpley color. And then I'll add some yellow, which deepens up the color further. So this is what I'm going to use on her hair. Let me start from this corner. I've got a small round brush. Like I've mentioned before, Andy Warhol's painting, of course, was screen printed. I'm trying to create the same effect using a brush and paints. So it won't be exactly like the screen printed version, but that's okay. Dry brushing it almost. I wiped out most of the paint. I'm dipping my brush in the paint and I'm wiping out most of it with my rag so that I get a very dry brush with very little paint in it. You know, the short sage blue Marilyn, which I'm basing my reproduction on over here, sold for a whopping $195 million. Which brings the thought to my mind, did pop art or abstract art really resonate with the so-called masses? Can any ordinary person afford this kind of money? Apart from that, do they really appreciate this kind of art? Abstract art, which pop art is a part of. When I show pop art or abstract art to the people around me, ordinary people who appreciate a good piece of art, usually realistic painting, but who are not really well versed in any art form, the usual response I get is, oh, even I can paint that. Or, hey, even my kid can paint that. What's so special about that? Whereas, compared to pop music, for example, pop music in every country, every language has pop music. And it is a part of the everyday lives of, everybody practically. People, you call it the common people, call it the masses. Can art ever become a part of popular consumption like that? Mixed up some crimson, some magenta, a little bit of yellow, and I'm giving her face a little contours. I'm mixing some acrylic medium with it and almost dry brushing it. I'm going to add some white to the mixture and a little more yellow. The lighter color here. I decided that I needed to deepen up her skin tone a little. So I've mixed up that crimson and magenta, a little yellow and a little bit of white, giving it just a little darker tone than there is. Trying to get as close to the color that Warhol used in this painting of his. So going back to my chromatic black, I'm going to mix it with some acrylic medium to make it more translucent, and I'm going to paint in her eyebrows. And now I'm getting on to her eyes. Now the shadows under her nose. Wiping my brush and dry brushing it. Adding shadows. the lips. Next, the teeth. I've got some unbleached titanium. Titanium white and a little bit of blue in it, slightly. Some unbleached titanium. So I've lost some of the red coloring on her lips, so I'm going to put it back. I've got cadmium red. Adding some of the darks back again. Now I've got my dark chromatic black and I'm going to paint in her beauty spot. You know, when Marilyn Monroe started off her career, she used to hide her mole. This is a legit mole she had because she didn't like it. But then I think she was told that it looks really beautiful, so then she would enhance it. And I think it's really beautiful. Ever since I started this painting, I've been binge watching Marilyn Monroe's movies. And like I mentioned, Andy Warhol took the promo poster of Niagara for this painting of his. I couldn't find that, unfortunately, on YouTube. I wanted to see what the color of her eyes were. I had forgotten that. I haven't seen Monroe movies for a long time. And her eyes are very beautiful. They are a lilac blue color, which I'm creating with the brilliant red and ultramarine blue mix. Warhol didn't have these details in the eyes because his was a silk screen painting which flattened out and darkened up her eyes. But I want to put that beautiful color of hers in her eyes. I want to strip away the mask and try and give a glimpse into the charismatic persona that Marilyn was. You know, as they say, the eyes are the window to the soul. Even though I think Warhol's offset effect did create something very interesting and intriguing in Marilyn Monroe's portrait. But like I said, I do want to bring out the beauty that her eyes had. I had made the shadow effect in her neck too dark, so I'm lightening it up by mixing my skin tone with the dark color that I had created for the shadows. It's more of a purpley color now. Adding the lighter colors back a little bit. Adding a lighter color of a skin tone to sort of highlight it. It's quite imperceptible, but it's there. I've added white to it to make it lighter. I'm going to add some of the lilac color that I made for her eyes, for her earring. Adding some yellow, cadmium medium yellow. Now I've got some fluorescent yellow, which I'm going to give a few highlights to her hair. Alright, so I think I've made this a little too white, and I want to tone it down because I don't want anything competing with Marilyn Monroe's face. So when you have something bright like this, your eyes naturally go there more than, the subject that I want the viewer to see. So I'm going to tone this down. So I'm going to take unbleached titanium white, mix it with a little bit of the background blue. That's why Warhol toned down. I mean, her original dress, if you Google and find out, this part is white, but I don't want it white in my painting because, like I said, it distracts. So that's why Warhol painted his paintings. He's made many of these paintings. He always toned this down. Added some more of the blue color. I think that's about it. That should do. So tell me what you think. Do you think I've done justice to Andy Warhol's brilliant Marilyn Monroe portrait? And have I done justice to Marilyn Monroe herself, her luminous beauty? I hope I have done. Tell me in the comments below. Let me give you a close-up. Her eyes. Her hair. Her mouth. The earrings she wore. Bye. See you next time. And don't forget to subscribe, hit the like button, and leave a comment below.